I once inadvertently caused a wedding. About 20 years ago, I was in Detroit at the Renaissance Center at a union conference with my wonderful wife, Michelle, who's a longtime union activist. She'd been in workshops all day long, and she wanted me to meet her there in the evening because there was a social get-together party. And she wanted me to introduce me to some folks because I was active in my local union. So I'm down there. There's about a dozen or so folks who were waiting outside the elevator. And she's introducing me around. It was all very nice. And the elevator doors open. And out steps this beautiful bride in this shimmering wedding gown with this glowing smile. And everybody's like, ooh, and ah, and the crowd parts like the Red Sea, and there's lots of congratulations, and it was just a beautiful moment. But behind her is this big guy in a tuxedo, and he points right over the top of her, right at me, and he says, "That's him! That's the guy!" And I was like, shit. And I'm like, hoping he's pointing over my shoulder, but nope, he's pointing dead at me. And I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, maybe I know his wife. I look at her, I'm running through the files in my head, I have no idea who she is either, and I'm thinking, this has got to be mistaken identity. And he steps around his bride, and he breaks to a huge smile, gives me this big hug, and says, "Thank you." And I was like, "You're welcome." I don't know who I'm hugging and why I'm hugging him, but he's very happy. And he lets go with one arm, and he says, "Remember all those great discussions and debates we used to have?" And I'm thinking, ooh, that's a good clue. Okay, he was probably one of my former students. You know, and I'm thinking, okay, based on his age, okay. Got it. I know where I know him from. Jail. I used to teach at the Wayne County Jail. It was a wonderful program. We had adult basic ed, we had GED classes, met some wonderful people. And he's going, as he goes on and on talking, I'm thinking, okay, I know more specifically where I know this guy. Remember, he used to bring Bible verses to the class. And, you know, I'm not a churchgoer, but, you know, you meet your students where they're at. And we'd have these debates, and we'd write essays and whatnot. It was great. And I don't remember a lot of the discussions except, you know, one about, you know, Matthew and doing for the least of your brothers and what that means. But something clearly touched him. And he's still got his arm around me, and he puts his other arm around his bride, and he looks at her with all this emotion in his voice, and he says to her, "This is the man I told you about." And then he looks at me, and he waves his other arm, and he's holding me firmly, and he says, "You're responsible for all this." It was probably the most humbling moment of my life. You know, and I introduced him to my wife, and we make a little more small talk, and there's hugs all the way around, like 2 or 3 more times. And amazingly, no one had tried to get on the elevator. Everybody just sort of stood back in a sort of a respectful silence and listened. You know, and they told a little bit about their plans, and then we went our separate ways. And we get on the elevator, and we're riding up in that elevator silence, and someone in the back says, "Wow, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen." And I know over the last 20 years, you know, teachers and schools in general have our image has been greatly tarnished because, you know, these crazy billionaires, you know, want to destroy public education and demonize us. But all of us who've been in it for the long haul have stories like this that we hang on to, that we bring with us and keeps us coming back day after day, year after year, decade after decade, because we know we're planting seeds, and that despite circumstance and bullshit standardized tests, that these seeds will, in time, take root.
Right on.
And maybe produce a few weddings.
Hejka.